Here he is again, the man with the big orange hands, who this time isn't banging on the good piece, because it's actually taken apart. Unfortunately, this is one of the lemons I got from Airgun. I'm going to have to do a little work on it. Maybe I can demonstrate that to you in a bit. But let's get started first. So you have something to look at. I've put the parts together for now. This is a rifle Umarex made in Spain, Usend. So I naturally assume, oh, this could be Nogamo. Haha. And when I had cleaned it up, I found out that it says right on top what I had been looking for the whole time. Namely, Norica Model 56. Yeah, I was being quite clever again. Cleverer than is good for me. Made in Spain, Umarex clearly stamped caliber 4.5, serial number. Yeah. The F mark is here. And there it is. The F mark. So everything you see with me always has the F mark, otherwise I wouldn't even want to mess with it. Now the plastic cap is still missing. It's lying in the plastic container at the back. A break barrel rifle, a small break barrel rifle, a cheap little break barrel rifle. What did I pay? You want to know, of course. I paid €54 gold coins for this monstrosity with a disposable scope. It says with disposable scope on it. And my brain didn't want to say anything right now. With a disposable scope? Well, it was such a cheap scope, 4x20 or something, I don't know. Those things are just getting tossed in the trash without a second thought these days. A break barrel rifle, who would have thought? Well, at least we now have the condition where I can just take it apart to show you a few parts from the inside. But let's start from the outside first. The stock? I was wondering myself, is it made like this? From the factory? But I would say chipping underneath is showing up grey. So whoever painted this thing, I think they knew what they were doing. That's a wooden stock. I don't think it's plastic. Yeah. That's wood, right? Yeah, it's wood. That's underneath there, so grey. So whether it was sanded down, whether it was repainted grey, or primed grey, in any case, if you did that, you already knew pretty much what you were doing. He just didn't bother to sand it down properly. Yeah, the stock is relatively small, so it's not a giant, but the muzzle energy, which I don't have a long list for, is okay. Also, the accuracy. I don't have a target here because I didn't get to finish, but it promises quite a bit. I really believe that under this ugly exterior, there's a good air rifle hiding even, if it's not very big. Up front, oh, what am I always working with this weird? I'll just do it like this. The trigger was relatively hard. We'll take a closer look at that in a bit. That's also a rear sight that, although mostly made of plastic, looks quite elaborate, so they put some effort into that. This thing isn't exactly young. I'll have to read up on Model 56 to see what I can find. The GR is not there. There was something on it that probably bothered someone with a scope, and the cheap scopes are always very low here. So he probably saw something that was always in the picture and said, get rid of that, let's break it off. So the trigger, I think that's the most direct trigger I've ever seen. At least I won't really have to mess with that because the trigger is okay. It's hard, but it's okay. What I will have to look at is probably the seal at the front, which is likely shot. And I've also never seen these screws here at the front of the stock that connect with the system. They go in at an angle, and you can look through into the piston. Let's see, they go all the way into the cavity on the other side too. And yeah, the first thing I did was test whether the piston at any point, or especially the piston seal, might be hitting some long screws or something. No, luckily that's not the case. What can happen though is that there are burrs on the inside, and when the piston snaps forward, it might bounce back and scrape across the seal or something. Because the first shots were all good, and then it started to go downhill towards the end, or something like that. We'll find out now, so let's keep our fingers crossed. This is going to be an interesting operation. At least, I won't really have to mess with that because the trigger is okay. It's hard, but it's fine. What I will have to look at is probably the seal at the front, which is likely shot. And I've also never seen these screws here at the front of the stock that connect with the system. They go in at an angle and you can look through into the piston. Let's see. They go all the way into the cavity on the other side too. And yeah, the first thing I did was check whether the piston at any point, or especially the piston seal, might be hitting some long screws or something. No, luckily that's not the case. What can happen though is that there are burrs on the inside, and when the piston snaps forward, it might bounce back and scrape across the seal or something. Because the first shots were all good, and then it started to go downhill towards the end, or something like that. We'll find out now, so let's keep our fingers crossed. This is going to be an interesting operation. Yeah, what would life be without risk? You see a completely normal, well-functioning air rifle up to this point. And now I'm just going to press around a bit, check the quality of the trigger. I have to aim along the side of the barrel. So a feature that's totally fine. The trigger is pretty hard, but it's also dry. So I would say I can live with the trigger. Can anything be adjusted on it? No. You can check right away if anything can be adjusted. It's still a no. Nothing is really out of place. So a super hard direct trigger, but without any scratching. So they seem to have used good materials in the right places here. I don't see any signs of wear on the back edge of the piston here. Here it is again, there's the catch. Yeah, I'll have to deal with that. But first I need to see how to handle the spring tension here. Because to get to the seal you have to remove the trigger mechanism. You especially have to watch out for the spring and be careful with these kinds of springs. There are always spring compressors floating around. Others say that even with stronger air rifles the spring isn't so bad. You couldn't just push it back in with your body weight. But if you don't expect it and then suddenly this thing hits you in the face, so you should know what you're doing before you do it. Or put on appropriate protective gear, put on a motorcycle helmet, wear thick clothes, and maybe move the Ming vase away and place it right next to the cat. Ming vase next to the cat. I think I'd better think that over again. I have a snake that doesn't clear out too badly. It clears out with cats. That works. So, is there anything I haven't mentioned yet that would be worth talking about? I mentioned the name, I talked about the trigger. You can conveniently take all of that off right now.
It goes into this little cup where the shadows are.
Yeah. I suspect new seals. Maybe I'll make another video. I still like to stretch out a video and make another one out of nothing. But I'm actually interested in that myself. It's relatively small. So once I've got the thing working again, probably sell it again without a GR. But just with the advice to get a rifle scope, and then it has to work because otherwise it's a total loss. Also, when you have a DIY project like this, you can only learn from it, right? And that's coming from the guy who has to turn off his camera all by himself without any helpful staff. I cry every time all week. Well, not quite maybe. 2001.